Anyway, we are live right now. So hello everybody. Welcome to Multiversity Coffee Break. I am Brian. Introduce yourself, friend.
Hi, I'm Sina, last name Grace, and I write comic books. I draw comic books. I draw other things. I write other things, but those are my two biggest passions. And I think today we're doing this on this calendar day specifically because it's the birthday of my new series that I'm doing with a bunch of friends called Getting It Together. This is the Kevin Wada variant. Oh, sorry. It's missing part of its cover because that's the kind of person I am. I was like, wow, did we really mess up and like put so much like a white logo over so much white on the background? No, that's torn off because I did last week to kind of get a big reminder in people's sort of social media feeds. I taped copies of this on my boobies and then did like the American Beauty movie poster where I was just like lying on a bed of Getting It Together pages and covers and stuff like that. And so I forgot that this was taped again from the other cover and it accidentally tore off. And that's okay. They're my comp copies. I can do what I want.
Absolutely.
This is my reference copy anyway. It should be dog-eared.
Absolutely.
This is just like pit bull-eared or something.
So let's talk about the book for a second. So I'm fascinated with the book for two reasons. First of all, I feel like when I started reading comics, there was exactly one comic book that ever mentioned music. And that was the rock and roll comics, those garbage comics from the 90s that had like Aerosmith and Guns N' Roses and these
Oh yeah.
like it was like autobiographical comics that were not very good. And I feel like music has become a very cool thing for people to include in comics, even though it's so hard to get across music in the comic form. Why do you think that you and others have leaned into doing so many music comics lately? Or comics that have musical elements to it, rather, you know?
I mean, I would say I'm gonna just take sole credit with the colorist on our series, Mick Struble, because of Little Depressed Boy.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing that series like 7, 8 years, 10 years ago, maybe even, but probably 7 years ago when it was at Image. And I think and then Matt Rosenberg also pushed really hard. And then of course, like Kieran Gillen comes along and like, blows it out of the water. But I think they're both, like comic books and music are both art forms that really resonate with folks in a way that other things don't. Like I would say like I think, everyone like, yeah, prose fiction is like, it does affect people, but like comics and music are both visceral, like there's an assault on your senses, just different senses. And the marriage of the two has been something that I think people have been flirting with for forever. I don't put a lot of active thought in it. It's just who I am. I think what I was hinting at when I say I draw other things is like sort of the biggest project that I had last year was doing a bunch of artwork for that musician Jenny Lewis for her On the Line album. And it was a really great marriage of how art and music could work together. Like if you play the album on Spotify, my drawings show up as like little animation pieces. So I don't know. I mean, and then specifically with Getting It Together, it's funny because it's like, I'm so tired of drawing instruments because again, I have to do this for like bands and stuff. Like I just finished a drawing for the band Metric we'll do something with it very soon. But it's even though I hate drawing instruments, I thought, oh well, I'll make Jenny Fine draw the instruments. Still somehow I'm drawing pages with instruments, and then anyway, can I say the word instrument more? But I think it's really cool. And then with this series, I just wanted to do something really different in terms of just how you can like layer sort of texture to the book. Like anyone who picks up the book will see an ad in the back for the fictional band Nip Slip. They have a real band camp. Mm-hmm. We have a song on the band camp, and that song
this morning.
Yeah, and that song is actually the song that Lauren is going to sing at like the first page of issue 2. And I think it's even like yeah, it's even like referenced on Kevin Wada's cover where it's like new single, photocopy, now streaming. And I just think that's really cool. I think that's a great way for you to get to know the characters. Now you know what the girl's voice sounds like.
Right.
I just wanted to do something different, you know, and
Yeah.
cool. And I don't know. I marched to the beat of my own drum.
There's also a very cool playlist in there, set up by Colleen Green, which has some really cool songs on it. And you know, I'm mad I read the issue before I saw that, but I've since gone back and read it again with the soundtrack, and it's a perfect soundtrack. Colleen did a great job, sort of matching tone.
And what's funny is I don't think she read the book. Like I saw the issues and everything. I'm sure she didn't read the book. And finally I was like, yo, I need a playlist. And she's like, well, what do you want it to sound like? And I just said, okay. Because this is kind of, I think, how I feel about the book now that we're all in quarantine. I was like, what songs would you play at your like first party when everything is back to normal? Like what's that playlist? And so that's the playlist. And I think that's, you know, I think that's what the book is for me now, is like this like is a celebration of the way things were. Like, you know, you can only be that messy in your 20s if you are in that deep physical contact with your friend group, like, you know, parties and whatnot. So I'm glad you liked that playlist. Yeah, it turned out really great. And
Yeah.
I love that we just, instead of like typing it out, I just was like, oh, I'm gonna just use the picture you sent me of the playlist. She's like, I don't want to type it out. She sent me a photo and I was like, all right, it's high enough resolution, I'm putting it in the book.
Nice. Now, we got our first question from Twitch, which
Okay.
is, which RuPaul's Drag Race queen would you want to see in a comic?
What I want to see in a comic. That's really hard because they're all so amazing. I'm not going to pick one. I'm going to pick a few. I think Sasha Velour would be super rad. I think Evie Oddly with the right. Oh, could you imagine if like Derek Robertson drew Evie Oddly, or like, yeah, like I think it would be cool. Like a Raphael Grandpa. Who would Raphael Grandpa do a great job drawing? I mean, it goes without saying that I think Dax exclamation point should be in so many comics. I think she should be in Archie comics. She has the nose. She actually, her makeup, she's public about this, I believe, but like the way she does her nose makeup is a direct like homage to Veronica.
Oh, wow.
From Archie. Yeah,
Yeah.
she does like this little triangle highlight to like give it the upturn. So those are the few. I mean, I'll keep coming back because I can't stop.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, I think Jackie Cox would be great if she was drawn by like Adam Hughes, because she's just got such classic makeup. This is so boring for you, Brian, but the person watching on Twitch is probably loving it. So
Yeah. Second question we got in from Twitch. Any plan to do more Archie comics? And this person loved Archie's Time Police, which I have to say, I'm very happy you did that book, but I'm a little bit mad because that was I have no ambition to be a comics writer, but I always said I would pitch a new Archie's Time Police book if I did want to be a comics writer. So you kind of beat me to the punch there. But you know,
well, it's Jughead's Time
I'm sorry,
Police.
Jughead. I'm sorry, Jughead's Time.
You're like gotta get my time machine and fix that.
Okay.
There are plans, but the Rona, she sort of sidelined a few of those plans. So
Yeah.
we'll see. But yeah, no, the door is open. I would even love to do more of Jughead's Time Police, because I kind of set it up at the end that there would be like this like time X-Force.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the end, that's what January does with the Time Thieves and with like Old Man Jughead, Grandpa Jughead, is like she kind of sets up this like Wetworks team that can do the jobs that, you know, no one else can.
Right.
The time jobs. Anyway, yeah, that's a terrible answer, but we'll see. I don't want to say anything definitive yet.
Okay. So one more question about the new book. You know, I think there are so many of your books that are clearly autobiographical, and then there are books like Iceman, which obviously every book you write is going to have some of you in it, but you are not Iceman, right? So you do books that are both autobiographical and also, you know, not. This book sort of, to me, lives in the intersection between those two. It feels like maybe your most personal book that isn't an autobiographical one. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, it's, I wrote it with Omar Spahi. We came up with it together, and I think we both had stuff on. This is kind of what makes it autobiographical, is like we both had stuff on our minds that we weren't seeing told in mainstream markets. Um, and we kind of used this book as a filter for all of that, like while still telling an interesting story about kind of how messy and fun your life is when you're in your 20s. Because like we're both 30 now. Omar has a kid. I have a dog. Like, so much commitment. Um, and I think, I made a hard rule after I finished my book Nothing Lasts Forever, that I was like, I'm kind of done talking about myself. So I think using this book is a great way to talk about things that are still on my mind, but not I don't have to lean on saying like, but this is me, this happened to me.
Right.
That serves a different purpose. But yeah, there are very personal things in there. I don't hide the fact that, like, in this first issue, one of the main characters, Jack, is dating a guy who seems a little like not to be trusted. And the way he like finally finds out that this person's kind of like a liar, all of that happened to me. Like, I dated
Really?
someone very briefly, very quickly, and it was like sort of the same process of like, that's a really weird story you said about my friend. I'm gonna go talk to that friend about it. And then that friend, like, opens up the can of worms. That's just like, wait, what? This person is what? And so we had to put that in there. And even the resolution of kind of having like your straight dude best friend kind of like puff up his chest and, stand by you, that even happened too. But in real life, it was with my Burn the Orphanage co-creator, Daniel Friedman. He like went with me to the guy's place so I could get all my clothes back. And he was like, why'd you bring your friend? And I was just like, because I'm scared of you. You're a fucking sociopath.
Well, so moving away from modern comics, we're gonna turn back the clock to the late '90s and early 2000s. And when I had
I'll
emailed,
start drawing.
yes, when I had emailed you about doing this, I said, pick a topic, and you said, can we do Cliffhanger Comics? And my question to you was, do you mean the imprint or the adaptation of the Sylvester Stallone movie? And I believe there is a Cliffhanger movie comic out there somewhere. But obviously, you meant the imprint. And I have to say, like, I'm familiar with Cliffhanger, but I am not encyclopedic at all with my knowledge. So for those who don't know what Cliffhanger Comics was, tell us what was it?
Cliffhanger was like the late 90s. No, it was pretty much the early 2000s like version of Image Comics, which is there were a bunch of really hot artists, Joe Madureira, Humberto Ramos, and J. Scott Campbell, and they started their own imprint, and I believe it was at Wildstorm.
Yes.
And this was the initial line. They did expand, like Lionel Francis Yu had a book, but like the other ones weren't very good. The first three were kind of like chef's kiss of their time. And so the first three series that they launched were Battle Chasers, Danger Girl, and Crimson. And it was sort of under the same like mentality of what like Image Comics was, which is like basically let the artist do whatever draw what he wants to draw, and you'll get the best work out of the artist, and the artist will like draw the book, like no problem, right? Except like that, like all of those books except for Crimson just like never came out. Like they came out like once every like 3 to 9 months. The J. Scott Campbell like era of Danger Girl books that like he drew were, it took like I think over 2 years to get 7 issues, but they were really beautifully drawn. And Danger Girl was like a female James Bond like spy adventure book. Battle Chasers was like a sword and sorcery fantasy book. And then Crimson was a vampire book about like a teenage boy who's like super wealthy and then gets turned into a vampire. And it's all about like him hanging out in the vampire world, but like also he might be destined, for yada yada, so on and so forth. And that one went on for like 24 issues, and that was written by Brian Augustin and drawn by Humberto Ramos. Anyway, those books were like catnip to like a 13 to 14-year-old boy such as myself. And me and my best friends would literally like have contests to see who could like clip the best like panels, pages, and splashes or whatever from the books and put them. We all had like these those like photo albums where you like rip open the clear sheet and then it's like
Scrapbook,
you know, pasty paper. We would scrapbook and compete as to who had the scrapbook. So we would just buy these books like 2 to 3 copies at a time and cut them up, and like it was great. I mean, you know what, like wow, that kept us from doing drugs. So I loved those books. I love those books. And I think I feel like, you know, all right, so I have this tattoo on my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And this S, the super S, is like the same thing as Cliffhanger. Like anyone who was there or gets it, they're my people. Like they, you know, it's like you were there with me. And it just sucked because like the only other books I was reading at the time were like Fathom, like just Fathom by Michael Turner. And that book never came out either. So like I just would go to the comic store every week and be like, I have nothing to buy, even though there were probably like dozens of books, but it was just because I only gave a shit about these like 4 books that never came out.
And see, that is one of the things that fascinates me about you, because I met you after reading your work for a while, and if you would ask me like name Sina's 4 or 5 favorite comics when he was growing up, those are the last books I would think about. When you had pitched me a piece about Fathom a couple of years ago, as you were doing a cover for a Fathom reissue or something, and I was like, how the fuck does this guy like Fathom? It just didn't fit. And I love that. I love when you find out people's tastes that you weren't aware of. And so do you see any influence of their work in your work at all, or is it something that you are purely a fan of and that didn't really influence you?
I mean, all my girls have like triple D knockers. No. Yeah, I mean, I think, well, you know, like I think comic books is are a really great way to expand with storytelling and visuals. And you're allowed to break a lot of rules. You don't have to be like, this is like, even if it's slice of life, like you can just do so many cool things in comics that you can't do elsewhere. And I think wanting to challenge myself or any storytellers I work with to try and be as bold and dynamic as possible comes from loving these books. I think that character design is super important, even if they're just normal people. Like you want those outfits to be like so specific that, you know, someone can cosplay as them. Right. Like, you know, that book Burn the Orphanage I did is like, it was so, sorry, I think my dog's about to bark, but we'll just deal with it because I think someone's coming to drop off mail, but we'll talk about that if it happens. Anyway, like the book Burn the Orphanage, even though they were all dressed like plain people, it was like very evident whenever a cosplayer would like walk by the table.
Absolutely.
It was like, oh, and that definitely came from Cliffhanger. And I also think that like, I will one day do a book like that, like a Battle Chasers Crimson-esque book. But it, you know, I also have for so many years been the kind of person who's been like, I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not good enough. And now I feel like that's my inner saboteur for the Twitch viewer who loves RuPaul's Drag Race. Like that's my inner saboteur talking. Like I am actually good enough to draw these things. And it's just a matter of like drawing the thing. So yeah, you'll see. I think it shows up in weird ways.
Yeah. So of those initial 3 books that you really loved, which one has sort of stood the test of time for you, that when you go back and revisit it, it's just
none of them.
None of them?
I would say Danger Girl probably holds up the most narratively. I will keep looking at Battle Chasers over and over again. By the way, everyone, so I just drew, while we were talking, I just drew Abby Chase. Really fast, no reference. I'm going to now try and draw Red Monica while we talk, which is going to be really hard without like pencils. But they like Hell Chasers like makes no sense. It just goes everywhere. It is like I can't even tell. Okay, so this is what the book is about. A bunch of wolves go and attack King Aramis's daughter, or King Aramis himself. No, he's missing. See what I mean? I can't even remember. His daughter Gully runs away and like is given this like box, and the box has these gigantic gloves. They're her dad's gloves, and they make her like a super fighter. She then runs into old wizard Nolan and his like talking big robot mech thing, Calibretto. Meanwhile, there's this like drunken retired soldier named Garrison who has history with this girl Red Monica, who's now become a bounty hunter, and all their lives intersect. Like, I don't even know what they're fighting against besides Gully's on the run. Like, I don't remember. No one cared. Like, you didn't care. Like, you just wanted to watch them fight shit because it was Joe Madureira just doing an awesome job of drawing really cool, weird shit in the fantasy world. Because, like, I guess he was a big fan of like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't know. And like this girl, Red Monica, had gigantic boobs that defied gravity. So you said you're a straight guy. Like,
Yes.
do those drawings do anything for you?
Not really.
I don't understand. Like I remember I tweeted something a while back being like, when I think about it, like women artists are way better at drawing women than men are. Like, Joelle Jones draws women better than like almost any living Catwoman artist, like, same with like Tula Lotay, like, I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was a controversial thought, and then everyone's like, no, you're right. Like, yeah, that's agreed.
No, I mean, I think you're absolutely right with that. What's interesting about a lot of the guys who are involved with Cliffhanger is that they went on to do video game stuff. And I wonder if that is at all related to the sort of looser narrative structure that you're talking about, where in a video game, you don't need as much backstory sometimes. You can just be dropped into this world and then have fun in that world.
It's so funny because all I play are like JRPGs, and I'm like, those games are all backstory. But you're right. You can play Mario Kart, and what's the backstory there? I don't even know.
Yeah. What I think is also interesting is that, and interesting is maybe the wrong word, tragic maybe is a better word, how many of these guys have gotten in trouble over the past couple of years for things they've said or done. These seem like maybe the last generation of creators that were sort of not taken to task for their opinions about female characters in some ways, or like, Scott Lobdell had a Cliffhanger book, and he's supposedly a big time sex creep. So
but like he always was. He just had been so protected by
yes, absolutely
his homies. Yeah, I mean, let me tell you, like, I mean, I think that's what's funny about these Cliffhanger guys is I think they actually will not get in trouble because it's in the work. Like their hearts are on their sleeves. Like, it's so funny. J. Scott Campbell, like on his Instagram, like is just like obsessed with Lana Del Rey. And you look at his girls and you're like, of course, like she has the Disney girl eyes. Like she looks like a Disney girl, but like in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he's dating this like young woman who looks like his drawings. Like it's just right there in front of you. It's like, he is who he's not hiding,
right? That
he's into like these girls with like, chipmunk smiles and gigantic eyes and button noses and like perky tits. Like, and same with Joe Madureira. It's like, yeah, he just gravitates towards girls with big boobs and little hips. Like it's whereas then I think it's more writers we have to watch out. No, everyone, we have to watch out for everyone. But like, I think writers can be a little more insidious because while there will be some of their proclivities in the work, it's not the same as like an artist being told to draw the thing they want to draw. And so they're drawing their ideal woman all day, every day. And I don't know, but yeah, I think these guys also like, Yeah, you're right. It could be like, I don't know. Yeah, I just, this is me just being like, I don't want there to be bad news about these guys.
I totally understand that. Whenever bad news breaks, you hope it's not your favorite creator who is the one that's breaking about. But you mentioned something about uh, those guys dating people that dating people who look like characters they draw. And I've had this long theory with a friend of mine that artists draw people who look like them. Do you think that's true? Do you think the artists use themselves for reference either like explicitly or just it's sort of baked into them? Like the person I always think of is, I don't know if you know Jonathan Case, but if you ever meet
Mhm.
Jonathan Case, it's like watching one of his drawings come to life and walk towards you. There are a bunch of guys like that who just really are good at drawing people who look like them.
Yeah, the funny thing is I was actually just texting a friend last night, sort of the opposite of that, which is like who looks like a comic book drawing of some I was like, yeah, Tessa Thompson looks like a Paul Pope drawing because like her upper lip always does that thing Paul Pope girls
Yeah.
do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because he thought a friend of mine looked like his sister, but then I showed him more pictures and he was like, oh yeah, nothing like that. I was like, yeah, my friend looks like a Sean Martin bro drawing and your sister looks like you with a wig. Um, I would say yeah, like yes and no. Like I think it's because it just depends on like how you use photo reference or how you use yourself as photo reference. Um, because I don't think like Adam Warren's men look like Adam Warren. Um, but it's there sometimes.
Alred's men look like Mike Alred.
Oh, really? Is that what he look? I don't remember what he looks like.
Okay, yeah. Like, there's probably like a half dozen people where I think it's very, very clear. And I wonder again if that's just like you looked at yourself more than anyone else over the course of your life. Just you lived in your own skin, and so maybe that's just what you're comfortable drawing. I don't know.
Or it's just like you're staring at the mirror looking for like photos of yourself, or
Right.
like looking at like yeah. So because I definitely will just take pictures of myself for photo reference.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that'll happen. This Red Monica drawing is amazing. I just can't wait till you see it.
How often do you use photo reference?
A lot actually. I'm trying to do this thing because um, I want to make sure I get back to like comic art feeling like comic art and not. I mean, Greg Land is amazing, but also like I don't want it to look quite like that, where it's like very clear that I'm using photo reference.
Yeah, don't do Greg Land.
Huh?
Don't do Greg Land.
I mean, I actually like. There's something really nice and soothing about his artwork. But anyway, I don't want to diss on him because I do like what he does. I love the way he draws hair. But so what I've been doing now is like it's mainly like with backgrounds and stuff, not like poses. But I'll sketch it out with the photo reference. Like I'll remove that layer, then I'll draw it again, and then sometimes what I'm trying to do now is like then I'll print it out and then ink it again. So
Oh, interesting.
it'll be like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of the photo reference. So that way it's like more and more taken off the table and becomes more and more like my lens.
Sure.
It's time consuming, but I think it's working out for me. But it's I try to marry both, so that way it's there, but like it's more a tool than a crutch.
Yeah.
God, these guys like never really liked drawing girls' hands. Their hands were always like covered by their boobs. Um,
Is
anyway,
Are there any comics that you've read in the last couple of years that give you the same sort of vibe or tone as the Cliffhanger books did?
nothing that gave me like I'm trying to think. No, nothing has given me like that vibe. I think now that I've like matured and my tastes have changed a little bit, there have been books that have made me feel like it have made me move and made me want to draw comics and want to like get off my keister and um open up a sketchbook and see what I can do and be like, oh, I want to make something as cool as that. But they have not been like as like concept driven as those Cliffhanger books. Like I think the guys at Aspen, they're doing a really great job of keeping a lot of the feel and tone of Mike Turner books, but and maybe it's because I've aged out, you know, like, I don't know, the one, I think, you know, like, I just read like a really negative review of Mark Millar's Jupiter's Legacy series that has the Frank Quitely art.
Yeah.
And I would say that like I get so excited for that book. And the review was like, this is the most like terrible writing. This is the most basic writing, but like we're paying the price of admission for Frank Quitely artwork. Like, let's just be honest. And I would say that that book is definitely like, oh my God, I get so excited to like look at the art in that and like look at the weird shit Mark makes Frank draw.
Right.
Similarly, and I think it's the same thing too of like questionable writing, but who cares is like, and like I hate that I'm like I've been repping this book all week, but like I just love Raphael Grandpa's artwork in this. I love the way Raphael Grandpa draws bat characters. So the Dark Knight Golden Child one shot is like it's just so exciting to see like some really freaking cool artwork. And then
that book is way better than it has any right to be.
But it's also really not good.
Oh, like, so I'm not the right, but the visuals are amazing in that book.
Yeah, I'm trying to find like another page that I just like really like. I mean, even this, like just this dark side image. There was a while where like Sean Gordon Murphy did that for me, but then kind of got over it. I kind of was like, this is sort of like samey. Like it's like cool cars, like same sort of angles, same poses. I know that like people are gonna get mad at me, but I liked it for a really, really long time, and I still love what it's like you like there's like you reach a threshold. Like I can like 300 pages of this guy's art and I'm good, you know, like, I mean, and he's so prolific.
Yeah, it's that way with bands too, though. Like there are certain bands that I have 1 or 2 records that I adore. I don't need to hear them do anything else again. Like I've had my fill of that band. Not, you know, there are some bands I'll listen to everything they ever did 100 times over, but there are some bands that like 1's enough or 2's enough. So I definitely get that.
Yeah. Oh my God, this Red Monica drawing is almost done. I want to draw her hands and then I'll show you.
Okay.
But yeah, so I think Sean Murphy did that for me in the beginning. And now I'm like, I'm good. But yeah.
Now, I know you have been picking up work here and there. I know you were at Marvel for a bit with Iceman. You're doing a couple little things at DC here and there. Do you have desire to? Because one of my favorite things is when a creator-owned artist or writer I love pops over to a Big 2 book, and then vice versa. I love seeing the same people playing different playgrounds. You know, do you have a desire to do a long run on another Big 2 book, or are you happy right now doing your creator-owned stuff?
Yeah, I just need to have more like sellable mainstream taste, so to speak, because like I keep going to DC being like, let me do Plastic Man, please let me do Plastic Man, and they're like, no one wants that. Start the campaign.
I will.
Like,
I'll start it today.
Make Plastic Man Grace again. Or something. I love Plastic Man. I also love Bart Allen Impulse. I don't know that I would have more than like 100 pages of Bart Allen story to tell, but who knows?
Right.
And also he has to be Impulse. I don't want him to be any other iteration of himself in the Flash mythology. I do love Catwoman, and I also sometimes feel like there's still a great Catwoman story to be told that hasn't been told yet. And that's the thing, is I'm really scared of a lot of the mainstream characters, because it's like the quintessential story has been told. And that's why I would be so excited about Plastic Man, is because like I still think there's so much more room with him.
Sure.
Also, here's my Red Monica drawing that I just drew.
That is fantastic.
Isn't that what she looks like, right?
One
of her boobs is smaller than the other, I know. Yeah, even in Archie, I would just love to play with those characters for a long period of time, and mess around with them. It was a wonderful gift, but also like it sucked so much to like have had a taste working with the Power Ranger comics on Go-Go Power Rangers, because like now, like I feel like you always feel like you get your sea legs right when it's done. Like that's how I felt with Iceman, was it's like, oh no, now I know how to do this book. and then it's like, oh, but you're done, and it's like, oh, darn. And it's the same with Power Rangers, where it's like, oh, but now I have a story to tell, and they're like, well, you know, like, it's done. Like, and now, like, you know, we got to move in this direction, and then like a pandemic hit, so whoops a daisies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, you know, even with, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any like Marvel character that I would be like interested in doing. I pitched a bunch of interesting stories. Like I pitched Ghost Rider to them. I pitched Howard the Duck to them. That's the thing, is I need to be pitching like Doctor Strange, one of the ones who like has a movie, you know? I mean, Ghost Rider's had movies, but they're they're questionable at best.
Yeah, but I also think that like one of the downsides of 2020 DC and Marvel comics is that there isn't a Howard Duck comic, that there isn't a Plastic Man comic. And I understand the financial implications for those books, but that's the stuff that, to me, that's the good stuff. That's the fun stuff, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, well, I love it when the stakes are a little bit lower and you can kind of play, like, the thing I was always told on Iceman that was pretty good advice was like, it doesn't have to be the end of the world, it has to be the end of their world. And I think that's a way more fun like sandbox to play in, or playground to mess around in, than the end of the world. Like I always check out at the end of Bond movies when it just is like them in like tanks with bazookas shooting at each other. I love the first 20 minutes, like when it's the parkour,
Right.
like James Bond, like, you know, like literally fighting a guy while he's like standing on a Vespa, like, you know, like, or whatever. Like I love that stuff so much more. It's, you know, even that's why I love all the like Captain America movies, because those fights are so like, because he's a hand-to-hand fighter,
Right.
the final fights are just like, so like Civil War's final fight is so great. I like that stuff more. So the smaller characters end up having those kinds of like fight scenes too.
Sure. All right. Well, we're just about out of time now. So, what are you sketching right now?
I'm trying to do the main character of Crimson, Alex.
All right. Well,
So
a couple minutes to wrap up Alex there. Where can folks find you on the internet if they want to learn more about you, or buy your comics, or watch your web series? Where can folks do all that?
luckily, my name is such that I've been able to like .com the heck out of it, and you know, it's the same app mentioned everywhere. My name is @Sina Grace on these things, and my Instagram has a pretty handy dandy like link tree. Oh, I think even my Twitter has a pretty handy dandy link tree that you can sort of find links to anything I've done, and that would maybe interest you. And then, you know, getting it together is at all comic stores and Comixology and all those wonderful things. And, you know, me and the creative team love you for checking it out. Yeah, that's my bottom line.
And before we go, you've been okay during quarantine? Everyone you know is safe, hopefully?
Yeah. My mom is good. My friends and family seem to be good. You know, it's like so complicated to like ever, like, you're on these like work phone calls and then someone's like, how are you? And I'm like, bitch, do you have 45 minutes?
Right, exactly.
Because it's not like easy, you know. I don't think I'm like super like, you know, I mean, we're all handling it the way we're handling it.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything's fine. I've like really gotten back into video games, which is good. All right, I know that you want me to go, so let me just,
Okay.
whatever. So there's Alex from Crimson, this
Okay.
little sad vampire. Wee. Are you doing okay in all of this?
Yeah, you know, I have 2 kids, which makes it, you know, tricky.
How old are they?
4 and 8.
Oh.
So my 8-year-old is doing remote 3rd grade in a room just over there right now, and my 4-year-old's a preschool dropout. We've been saying because, you know, we're just not going to risk that. So I'm just, you know, doing stuff with him, and, you know, we're hanging in there. We're doing all right. So my wife works in a nursing home, so that can be a bit tricky right now, but we're doing the best we can.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Like, it sounds like you're keeping spirits up.
Trying.
Finding ways to smile.
Absolutely. Well, this has been really fun. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for everyone who watched. Woo.
Yes. And this will be on YouTube later. I'll send you an email with a link and all that. So
Awesome.
all right. Take care, Sina. Bye-bye.
Bye.